Welcome to Nausea Reviews. This is Brian, your host, and today we're looking at Body Bags, a comedy horror anthology presented by Showtime and John Carpenter. This one has about a page worth of people in it that I recognized. I don't think I got all of them, to be honest, because it's an anthology and there's a lot of bit parts, but there's a lot of people in it. Alright, so actors. John Carpenter. He's pretty good. I don't think I've ever seen him act before, but hey, he's in it. Tobe Hooper, once again, never seen him act before, but he's in it. Wes Craven, he was in Scream. He played Fred, the janitor. Sam Raimi's in this movie. Once again, don't think I've ever seen him act in anything. And I believe that's all the directors that are in this movie. And yes, I realize John Carpenter and all these names, very important directors for the horror community. We got John Carpenter with Halloween and The Thing, Vampires, lots of stuff. Tobe Hooper, Texas Chainsaw, and Life Force. I prefer Life Force. Wes Craven, Nightmare on Elm Street, Scream, whole Scream franchise. Sam Raimi, Evil Dead, for sure, and Darkman. Darkman's pretty good. And if you've watched any of John Carpenter's things, several of these names aren't going to matter, or you're going to recognize who they are when you watch the movie if you don't know actors. And I'm not going to get the names all right because I don't fucking know how to say this first one coming up. Dave Noddington. He's the guy from American Werewolf in London. The werewolf. It's the only thing I know him from. We got Peter Jason, who's in the Mortal Kombat movie as Johnny Cage's mentor. He's also in They Live and Escape from L.A. Notice any John Carpenters in that? Because I did. Then we got George Flower, who I only know him by his voice. He's also in They Live. I'm sure I've seen him other places, but that's the one that sticks out. Stacy Keach, he's in Sin City 2, The Sinning, because I can't remember the full title. He's a voice in the Rugrats, which I just thought was funny. He's also in Escape from L.A., and I'm sure plenty of other ones. He was a hard ass in Escape from L.A., but he's pretty good. He had a cactus he'd spray with water. I remember too many things about movies. Mark Hamill's in it. I was pretty surprised when he popped up. John Agar's in it, who's like a 50s guy, and the only reason I know that John Agar is a person is because of Brandon Tunnel on YouTube. He reviewed The Tarantula, and he's in that. That's the only reason I put him on the list, because I don't even know what character he plays. And then we got the good old Tom Arnold, who's coincidentally in, I'd say, the worst Nightmare on Elm Street out of all of them, even including the remake, which was terrible. So, Freddy's dead. He plays Tom Arnold in that. Like I said, there's probably more notable actors and actresses in this movie. I just don't know who they are. So, this is a horror anthology. It's 3 stories. Gas Station, directed by John Carpenter. Hair, directed by John Carpenter, which I don't know why they had Wes Craven on site. I don't know why they didn't just make him do one. And then Tobe Hooper does the third one called The Eye. And this is kind of like a Tales from the Crypt ripoff because John Carpenter's comedic, jokey host guy in makeup, and then we have the stories, and then he comes in and says some quippy, jokey stuff, which is pretty enjoyable. And I'd like to say that it was good because John Carpenter and all these people are involved, but I'd say it's mediocre, average at best. I bet critics hated it. The problem is, I liked everything with John Carpenter. He's the coroner in this movie, and he sets up each story, and his framing device thing I like. I think it's funny. It's not like great all the time, but it made me giggle a few times, and giggling's good. And then we have the first story, which is like a traditional slasher condensed into a short story. It's got some comedic elements to it, but it keeps those at a minimum, I would say. And then Hair is like, I thought it was funny, but I could definitely see how people would say it's just boring and should not have been shot. But it has that one's meh for me. Didn't hate it, didn't love it. They kind of wild out at the end. And then The Eye, my biggest problem with this anthology is the story Eye, directed by Tobe Hooper. And the only reason is that, in my opinion, there's no comedic anything in that story. And that story deals with some pretty heavy shit. If they would have made... I'm not going to get into what actually happened right here. We'll do that later in the overview. But it was a fairly serious topic, but it wasn't like ridiculously overdressed to make it comedic or anything like that. It's really weird. I don't know where Tobe Hooper's humor compass is, because stories tell that he thought Texas Chainsaw was a black comedy, and everybody else that saw it, besides me and my brother, thought it was the most horrific thing they've ever seen. By the way, me and my brother don't really like it all that much. So it's the same kind of thing. I mean, it's a different story and everything, but it's like that level of degrading horrificness was apparently supposed to be comedic for him. And in this one, it's like there's no comedic like flourish on anything. I mean, the coroner says some jokey shit after it's over, but the actual story was just too serious for this anthology, in my opinion. I liked the segment. I just don't think it should have been in this anthology. If it was like just the coroner parts were funny and the stories were serious, it would fit, but they're not. I mean, there's obvious jokiness in those, and there's not in this one. So that kind of brings it down. Also, the music in the first one is your John Carpenter's synth. It's good stuff, if you like it. I like it, so it was good stuff. The second one's music was like also done by John Carpenter. There was another guy, but I don't know who he is. That's beside the point. When you say John Carpenter's name on it, I feel like he does most of the work. I could be wrong on that, but that's what it feels like. That one's more like, I don't know the music genre that it is, but like if you were watching a cartoon, for some reason Doug keeps popping up in my head, like his sister wears a beret because she thinks she's French. It's that whole like, I'm trying to think here, like open mic poet night type thing. Once you hear it, I can't imitate it, I'm not even gonna try. But once you hear it, you'll be like, oh yeah, that. But if it was going to get played up in like a movie or a TV show, it would be like at a poet society where none of the poetry rhymes at all because they're edgy as fuck and they're going to do it their way. That kind of stuff. If that doesn't paint the picture, I can't help. Not that I didn't like the music, it was just weird. But in the third one, I didn't even notice any music at all. That doesn't mean there isn't music in it, I just didn't notice it. So this one comes out to be like a meh, because I liked half the movie. I guess it's more than a meh, because I liked half the movie. One of the stories was meh, and the other one I didn't like for this anthology. Also, a bunch of religious stuff in that one. I don't know enough about religion. We'll get to it later. So now we're going to the overview, because I front-loaded the shit out of this, because it's from a guy that I like a lot of his movies from, so I guess that's why. Plus, it's the first anthology I'm doing, I didn't know how to do it. So, we open up. Spoilers from now on. We open up. Remember Porky Pig at the end? That's all, folks? That circle? Well, we got John Carpenter in decrepit makeup with a chainsaw in a circle like that. And he's like waving this chainsaw around, revving it up. And then it just like, it dies. And he gets sad. And then we cut to the real movie. And I'm not going to really explain what the coroner does. Just know that he's John Carpenter in decrepit makeup. And he's drinking like formaldehyde as a martini, and I'm pretty sure he's eating a person, but we could be wrong. I'm not going to say much because basically all of his things are jokes, and one, you wouldn't have the visual context, and two, it just wouldn't be funny at all if I told you what they were. I'll tell you about one that I thought was kind of funny that might be offensive to some people, but he sets up a story. Basically, he's upset with natural causes because they don't have any stories. So he goes to a body bag that has a story. And I say kind of sets it up because what he says in the beginning doesn't always correspond to what happens in the short. But every time he makes a comment after, it's part of the story. I don't know. It's weird. It's like the middle story was supposed to be a different story and something didn't work out. And that's what they come up with. I have no basis on that at all, other than the fact that when the coroner sets it up, it doesn't make sense. So our first story is called The Gas Station, and if you like John Carpenter movies, this will make you smile a little bit. But on the TV and in the radio, they're talking about the Haddonfield Killer. I mean, that's not his name, but they're talking about a killer in Haddonfield. It's not Michael Myers, but I just thought that was funny. So, it's based in good old Illinois that has palm trees because the movie was shot in, like, California, and it was based in Illinois. Anyways, that's beside the point. We open up on a new girl. She's new to the gas station. This is her first night. She goes up to relieve the guy on duty. His name's Bill. He writes down his number, gives her a little bit of the rundown. The door locks automatically. That's going to be important later. And then she's studying, because she's a college girl, and she's studying psychology. She's opened up a page on psychopaths and sociopaths. That makes sense. But I didn't read the books on the page. I just saw the bold letters. And then we get creepy fucking Wes Craven. I don't even know what his character's name in this movie is. He's just crazy-eyed, buys a pack of smokes, hits on her in the creepiest way ever, and he goes off. He's a suspect for this murderer that we know is going to attack her because it's a horror movie, and they brought up a murderer in the beginning. Then we get the guy from American Werewolf. We're going to call him Credit Card Guy because his whole, like, plot device thing is his credit card. By the way, none of these stories throw you for a loop too much except the second one. It's pretty run by numbers, but it's fun to watch. So everybody looks creepy. Like, even this guy looks creepy. But you can tell that he's not going to be the guy that tries to kill her at the end. But he starts flirting with her. She's receptive to it. So receptive, in fact, she forgets to give his credit card back and runs outside to give it back to him. He doesn't notice her and just drives off. So now she's locked out. And then she gets jump scared by a bum that has to go to the bathroom. Then she's running around looking for the spare key in the... Because this gas station is like, they're locked off from you. More like a city gas station. I don't live in the city. So we have like a regular like convenience store type thing. And then there's the shop that works on vehicles like across the parking lot. So she's basically in a cubicle with a bathroom and cigarettes everywhere. And then they come up and she slides the thing out. So she never has to like physically interact with anybody that's coming up. It's that kind of gas station. While she's searching for that key, she knocks over a picture. She picks the picture back up, and it's Sam Raimi as Employee of the Month. But his name tag says Bill. So that's your first tee off that we know who the fucking murderer is. So she gets the key, she runs in, gives the bum the bathroom key, and is freaking out because she just got jump scared by a bum. Then this coked out couple come up as her next people. The guy needs to use the bathroom, so she has him check on the bum. And the girl he's with, or the woman, doesn't know how to pump gas at all. So she has to leave the booth again. She remembers her keys this time. She has to go out and help her. The guy comes back, tells her that the bum is asleep on the floor. Doesn't grab the key, though. So she goes to the bathroom, gets the key, goes in, can't find the bum. So either that guy was lying or the bum left in the couple of minutes it took for that interaction to happen. She sees this pretty sweet painting on the wall. It's like two people dying with the demon coming out of one of them, ripping out the other one's heart. It's pretty sweet. This is when she starts to freak shit forever. It's like she's spazzy the whole rest of the movie. And with good reason. As she's walking back to the booth to lock her back in, she hears the car lift move, and then she goes and checks the truck because she noticed it go up, and when she looked again, it was down. And we got a dead bum with a throat slash in the truck. That makes her freak out. She knocks over a bunch of cans of oil, and there's two reasons I bring up the cans of oil. One, it's a really neat shot of the oil just spilling out of the can. It's definitely John Carpenter. And that oil puddle is important later. She calls Bill, the number that fake Bill from the beginning of the movie gave her. It rings over to the mechanic shop, and fake Bill picks up the phone. He's got a bloody machete. He walks over, grabs a sledgehammer, and she's in the back bathroom. There's some lockers. She's in the bathroom trying to figure out something to do while he's slamming through the front of this thing. And she opens one of the lockers, and dead Sam Raimi falls out. So Sam Raimi plays a dead body. He plays a dead body real good. He is all over her. She cannot get up. It's pretty great. After knowing what Sam Raimi's put a lot of his actors through, Bruce Campbell, the main one, it's fun to see him happen to be just rolled around on the ground. Not that he didn't go through a load of shit during Evil Dead, but it's fun to see him get a little bit back. She picks up a chair, dude breaks in, finally, and she just smashes him in the face with this chair. He's got more blood than a human body comes out of his nose, feels like. That's one of those little comedic flourishes. It's like way too much blood. He's seizing on the ground, and finally his eyes close. She thinks she's safe. She gets out, but as she's leaving, his eyes open. He grabs onto her. She gets away and runs across to the mechanic's place while he passes out. But then he gets up, and at this point I'm like, can he just die, please? Not that I was bored with the movie, but I like the main girl enough to not want her to get murdered. She gets in the truck, which if she noticed that he got up sooner, would have been a great idea. But he hits the truck lift. It goes up. She can't leave. Then the credit card guy comes in and tackles fake Bill, and he gets his ass kicked. The good thing about that was it was a distraction enough for her to get away. Then Bill slips on that oil that I mentioned earlier, and she hits the car lift, and it crushes him, and it sprays out so much blood. It's a comical amount of blood. And he just won't die. I mean, he never gets up again. This is the kill. But he stays alive before he finally, relaxes out forever. So that was that one. These end pretty abruptly. As, anthologies tend to do. Then we go back to Coroner having fun with boobs for some reason. There's a lot of boobs in this movie, but they're all dead boobs. Like, he goes into the freezer things, the trays. I don't know what they're called. I used to know what they're called. Can't think of it. there's this, I couldn't tell if it was a mannequin, or not a mannequin, like a prosthetic lady or a real actress. I'm sure the boobs were prosthetic, other than the fact that the joke was they're fake boobs. But he tries to pull the tray out and she gets stuck. And he's got to push it back in and try real hard. And it makes funny sound effects. Then we go to the next one and it's more boobs. And then the next one, it's a dude with a chick's head. And then the next one, it's a chick with a dude's head. And then he takes the heads, makes them kiss, throw them on the ground. That's the only one I'm going to explain because I thought it was hilarious. There's one more set of boobs in this movie, but it's zombie boobs. I don't know why there's a bunch of dead boobs in this movie. Then we go on to hair. And this one stars Stacy Keach as a guy that's balding and doesn't like it. Basically, the first thing we see or hear, he's getting ready to have dinner with his girlfriend, but there's a hair commercial like, if nothing else has worked, come to our company and we'll help you grow your hair. Worked for me so good, I bought the company. That kind of crap. And he's worried about his hair. He combed it and she commented on it, but it looked fine. And then this short could definitely be considered boring unless you're a weirdo like I am, because sometimes it's just fun to see an actor act. So this whole story, like a quick rundown before I get into the detail-y bits, it's about a guy that can't come to terms with the fact that he's balding, and then some stuff happens at the end. So if you think that's boring, skip this one. But it made me giggle enough. I felt for the guy. But we're talking about a guy that has longer than shoulder-length hair as it is. And I'd probably be pretty upset if I started to lose it. But not like one of those guys that's like, it's tied to my masculinity. If I don't have hair, I can't be anybody. Which is how this guy is. Just remember, this movie came out in 93 when like hair plugs were a thing that people actually cared about. So it might have been before hair plugs. I don't know. It just reminded me of hair plugs. So that's like the main thing. So I'm not going to give you his thoughts and feelings. I'm just going to tell you what happens, because it's one of those movies where you would get more bored of me talking about it than actually watching it. But it made me giggle a little bit because some of the stuff they put in here is like obviously ridiculous. Pretty much everybody in this movie has like fucking great hair. Like his girlfriend, great hair. She makes an appointment for him with her hairstylist, and this guy, I love this guy. Like in real life, if I had to hang out with him, I'd probably want to stab him. But in this movie, he's great. He's your stereotypical, like, California hairstylist guy. He's got his hair feathered out. It looks amazing. And the hairdresser doesn't know what to do with his hair. Like, because Stacy doesn't want it being cut because he's afraid to lose any, as if it wouldn't grow back. But the hairstylist does his hair up. It looks fine. It looked fine before he did all that shit to it, because I don't really care about that. He should just, like, shave that part off. Actually, I like Stacy Keach looking how he does, so he can keep his hair however the fuck he wants. But when he gets out, and he's pretty confident at this point. Like, he has no confidence through this whole thing. He's got a little bit of confidence going, and then he looks around, and he sees this lady who has hair down to her waist, and it's, like, perfect hair. And then this guy has hair down past his nipples, so I don't know how long besides that to tell you. And then he sees this other guy with the same kind of hair. And then it pans down to a dog. And this dog has so much long, flowy hair. Like, it made me laugh, probably out loud, because it's just so ridiculous. This makes him lose all of his confidence. Because he saw 3 people and a dog, which you could argue was just in his head because of how he's feeling. But this isn't a psychological movie. Then he does all that stupid crap that you see people do. Like, all this hair crap. He paints the top of his head. That whole dealy bop. And his girlfriend comes over and is like, why the fuck is the top of your head painted? And there's some fun shenanigans that I thought was going to end in, like, him being kind of okay. Because she kisses the top of his head, gets that painted shit all over it after they had, like, a meaningful moment. And then she sees all the shit he bought, and then that just ruins it. And in his depression and painted head, he sees that commercial from the beginning again. Goes to the place, and this nurse straight manipulates the shit out of him. She's plastic surgeryed, and she's just, like, anything that he, like, says, she agrees with. So at this place, they take a picture of you, and then they put it in a machine, and then it shows how you would look with different hairs. So every time, it's like, why don't we do this haircut? And then if he shows any kind of, like, I don't know about that, the nurse is like, I agree, it's terrible. And anytime he goes, I like that, she's like, yeah, we should do that one. So that kind of thing. So then he picks, like, I don't know, hair almost down to his ass, which seems a bit extreme, if I would say so myself. So he gets home, His head's all wrapped up. He's not allowed to take it off until the next day, and he almost does. But he doesn't. And then he's like a kid on Christmas the next day. Starts unwrapping his head, and a giant long lock of hair falls out. And he's the happiest ever. I've ever seen Stacy Keach be happy. I don't care that it's acting. Fairly happy. His girlfriend comes over, and he is just exuding all the confidence and all the sexual vibes and everything. And she responds to it too much, in my opinion. At first, I thought it was just like she was going off his confidence. But then later, we learned that she's just a whore for his hair. And I thought Stacy Keach was going to look absolutely ridiculous with long hair, because I've never seen him with any more hair than this movie. He don't look that bad with long hair. It's pretty good. The next morning, he has like a tickle in his throat. He's starting to get sick, or at least the beginnings of that. And he looks in the mirror, and his hair is about 6 inches longer than it was the night before. So we got some magic hair going on here. He goes back to Mr. Hairdresser, and everybody's ogling in this dude's hair. Like people in line, the hairstylist. And the hairstylist starts cutting the hair. And then the hair is alive. Not like a part of him alive, but like external alive. Because when we see the hair on the floor, we see these like worms inch away from it that are obviously added in effects with eyeballs. You can see their eyes. But they're really tiny. It's like a shine. He looks, because he's got that tickle in his throat. He looks, and there's like a worm, a segmented worm, really skinny, like the size of hair, worm in his throat. And then when he looks at it, it goes away back down his throat. Then he tries to call a bunch of places to like get help. And he goes to call the hair place, I'm assuming, and then he just passes out. When he wakes up, he's got sores all over his face. He's got like head hair, as long as the head hair is, growing out of his mustache, his eyebrows. Later on, they're like growing out of his nose. He's got hair coming out everywhere. He finds that thing in his throat that's like way long, and he cuts it, and it screams. And then he looks at it under a magnifying glass, and it's a snake. It's a tiny snake with like razor teeth. Then we go back to the hair place, and he's looking like, he looks like something, but I can't put my finger on it. He's basically a Yeti at this point, I guess is a way to say it. But he's got hair growing out of his face in a weird place. Then we get the explanation. And during this explanation, the guy from the commercial cuts his arm open, and it's ridiculous. And a bunch of those little worms start coming out. And then they're aliens that eat people's brains. So he's full of these worm things. And they're eating his brain, and he goes catatonic. And then they start, harvesting all the wormy dudes off of his head. And then it just ends. But it reminded me of an episode on the new Creepshow, towards the end of Creepshow, the live action ones, because they did animated stuff after that, with these diet pill thing. It reminded me of that. I mean, it's obviously different, but same kind of thing. A place finds a thing to fix a thing. It turns out to be bad. In this one, the aliens were spreading their own spore. So we have more fun with the coroner. I'm not going to say what it was, because it's a bunch of talking, and then we see an eyeball. And this one's where Mark Hamill comes in. He's a baseball player, minor league, but he's hoping to get scouted. But he says, something always happens to me when I think something's going good. So he's got bad luck. Turns out his bad luck turns into a car accident that a giant shard of glass gets stabbed into his eyeball. So if you don't like eye trauma, this is not the short for you. It's a pretty good effect on his eye, too. He touches it even. Made me go, and that stuff doesn't usually bother me. So he thinks his life is ruined. He's got a wife. His wife comes to the hospital, but he gets lucky, quote unquote lucky, because this new doctor has this new procedure of putting a brand new eye in his socket from a donor. Now, this is where this religious crap comes in. While he's getting the transplant surgery, their priest, because they're religious in this movie, the priest is reading passages that are like so on point it hurts, about eyeballs and stuff like that. It's a little bit too much for me. It's like, Toby, calm it down. It's okay. If you haven't guessed how this movie or this short goes, you haven't seen enough movies, by the way. So he's getting headaches. He's got a temper. He's hornier than he normally is. He starts seeing things like zombie boobs, and then he goes and digs where the zombie boobs were, and he thinks he sees a dead body. And then it's not. So it's one of those, my body part's from an evil person, and now it's starting to affect my real life. So he's getting pretty bad. And Mark Hamill does a great job. Like I said, I just think this segment doesn't fit in this anthology. The segment itself, good. Take away the religious stuff, but that's just because I'm not religious. So I don't know what any of it means. And he's got a brown eye instead of a blue eye. It's like a point. in this, but it's the blackest brown eye I've ever seen in my entire life. And I have brown eyes, so I see brown eyes literally every day. After a bunch of... This is where the scene comes in that's a mixture of Tobe Hooper being kind of fucked up. So in this one scene, we have a rape, necrophilia, and cannibalism all rolled up into one. Because he gets hyper-aggressive and she lets it happen because he's pretty creepy. Her hand's even on the Bible. That's how much she doesn't want to do this. So there's our rape. Then he starts hallucinating that she's dead while he's having sex with her. So that's the necrophilia. And then he hallucinates, and this turns him on way hard, all these creepy things, because his eyeball's taking control. His eyeball was from a fucked up guy. Then he imagines eating her while he's having sex with her while she's a corpse. And they could have played this up like way more than they did, and then I could get the comedy from it, and I wouldn't have a problem with it. But the prosthetic that they used for the dead body wasn't ridiculous enough for me to just not think that that's just the prosthetic that they had for this lady. And he bites her for real and draws blood, and that ends this rape, because then, you know, his mind, his real mind snaps in, and he doesn't like it. He starts reading the Bible. She sleeps on the floor. But during this scene, Mark Hamill and this actress, which I'm pretty sure her name is Twiggy, I don't know who she is, they decided that having sex in that scene in real life was a good idea. So, if you've ever wanted to see part of Luke Skywalker's dick, you watch this movie. You can't see the head, but you can see more of it than you wanted to, or less of it than you wanted to, depending on how you want to look at that situation. Coincidentally, you also get to see a vagina. I don't think they were supposed to show that. Just thought that was kind of fun that I noticed that, because I'm a fucking weird creeper. This is when he figures out that the eyeball's from a murderer, and then he goes to the library, figures out that there was a murderer. But the eyeball's pretty much taken over at this point. He's got her scared to death because he's threatening to kill her and other nefarious things that we talked about earlier. And he's starting to like it because the eyeball's influencing him. And then she brings up the Bible and she yells about the Bible for like 10 minutes, it feels like. And then, I'm going to say it like this. His faith in the Bible snaps him back to reality. And he's got some gardening shears threatening her with them. And he just decides that... And he sees Flash... Because I forgot to bring this up earlier. She's pregnant with his baby. Not because of the rape. Way before that. Before his eye fell out. But he just jams it into his eyeball. Like, I feel like he could have, like, plucked the eye in a different way. But if he thought that this was the only way to do it... Because he's pretty much dead. He kills himself by stabbing himself in the eye and the brain. I mean, that's not confirmed because it just, like, cuts after that. Oh, and it ends on a quote about if your eyeball isn't nice, pluck it out. It's a Bible line that is so on point it hurts. So that's we go back to the coroner, and it turns out that he's a fucking zombie this whole time. And the real coroners come in, and the real coroners are Tom Arnold and Tobe Hooper. And there's some fun stuff here too, because he acts like a cadaver, and then they're cutting him open to do their autopsy on him, and his head's like moving. And when they look away, he looks at the camera. It's one of those kind of fun gags. So that's it for this movie. I definitely think that it has merit as a movie. The problem is I can understand why it ultimately probably failed, because you started strong, the middle was meh, and then the end probably put people off because it wasn't comedic enough. If they would have played up the rape scene a little bit more, I don't know how to do that, but if they would have made like maybe the prosthetic a little bit more ridiculous, or just done something in a way that made you think comedy, not horrific act of horrificness, because you add like all three of the worst things in at once, and it's like, ugh! It needed to be part of a real, no comedy anthology story. That would have been a great one if they had a serious tone, but some people might think that's funny. I don't. In a movie, it's fine. Like I said, I didn't like the short. I didn't like that the short was in this anthology. But it brings down the whole project a little bit, in my opinion. Not as much as Hair. Hair was kind of boring. I thought it was funny just because I like subtle crap like that. And Stacey Keach did a good job of literally crumbling because of his hair. So this one's if you're a hardcore John Carpenter fan, give it a watch. If you don't care about John Carpenter, then there's no reason to watch it for you, because it's got John Carpenter all over it. Not just because, he directed 2 of the 3 shorts, and he was our horror host. He was our Tales from the Crypt keeper for this movie. So if you like it, if you like him and his stuff, then you'll probably find some enjoyment out of it. That's probably the only reason that I enjoyed it as much as I did, was because I love John Carpenter's stuff. I can't really think of anything else to say except to reiterate that you 100% definitely get to see Luke Skywalker's dick in this movie. And I'm obsessing over it in a way that I probably shouldn't. I just think it's hilarious. But we're going to move on. I, once again, have not picked anything for next week because I feel like it's easier to not promise things. Because if I promise it and I start to watch it and I hate it, I might shut it off. Because if I had the choice to shut off Wendigo, I would have definitely not watched it. But that's all for me for this week. Hope you all have a wonderful week. See you on the next one. This has been Brian from Nausea Reviews.